Okay, there's some sort of, it's the ark as pictured. The Ark of the Covenant. The law of Moses. The Torah, or law of Moses, the law which the Pharisees studied day and night, was the only law which the Jews had ever had. It is found in the first 5 books of the Bible. This sacred book was already old when Virgil began writing the Aeneid. Most of these ancient tradition was put into written form about 400 or 500 years before, or shortly after that unhappy time when the Jews had been taken to exile in Babylon, and then they were told, no, you're not allowed to do your practices, practice your religion, your customs, your rites, etc. So that's where that song comes in, because it's an Old Testament scripture. And there we sat at the rivers of Babylon, where we wept for when we remembered Zion. Okay, when they were able to do all their religion, etc. freely. Fearful that in that strange land the history of their race and all of its past glory might be forgotten, they had gathered together what remained of old histories written several hundred years earlier, as well as all of the myths, legends, stories, songs and psalms which had been handed down by word of mouth for generations. And these formed their Bible. Well, actually their text, right? Their scrolls. Because the Bible is Greek, isn't it? It's a compilation of so many books, okay, into one. So we had these scrolls. Through it runs a record of how time and again the Jewish people, unlike their neighbours, had been brought back by the great prophets to the worship of one God. During the centuries, however, the idea of what God was like had greatly changed. Those who were writing the Bible, the scrolls, in Babylon, had come to think of him as God of righteousness and justice. Before that, he had been a vengeful God of war, leading them to battle against their enemies. And in the earliest days, when the Jews had been but a tribe of half-savage shepherds roaming the Arabian desert, their God had been but one of the many strange spirits which seemed to people the desert world about them. Then, as they had led their herds of sheep and goats from one oasis to another, they made bloody sacrifices to the chosen God of their tribe for his protection, burning on the altar their firstborn children, as later they were to offer up each firstborn lamb and goat. Was that in times of Moloch? Okay, where they offered their children as sacrifices to Moloch. In time, these ragged shepherds pushed north out of the barren desert into the fertile valley of the Babylonians, and later from there on into Palestine, the land of the Phoenicians or Canaanites. Fearing that their desert god would have no power in this land of green pastures and villages, they adopted the local gods of the Canaanites. Later, driven by famine into Egypt, they accepted the gods of the Egyptians. There in Egypt they remained, oppressed by their pharaohs, or the kings, until rescued by Moses and then liberated. Their first great prophet and leader. Leading his people out of Egypt back into the desert, Moses brought them to the worship of one God, whose name was Yahweh, the Thunderer, the God of thunder, whose dwelling place was the volcano Mount Sinai, and whose power could be seen in the pillar of flame by night and the pillar of cloud by day. Allowing them to make no idols or images of their God, Moses had them build an ark in which the spirit of Yahweh might be carried with them over the desert as they journeyed on toward Canaan. This is the story of those earliest days of the Jews up to the death of Moses, as told in the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. In the beginning, the Spirit of God was waving over the face of the waters, and heavens and earth were created. And on the 6th day, God created man in his own image. Of the dust from the ground he formed him and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being. And on the 7th day God rested from his work, and thus he blessed the 7th day and sanctified it. Then the Lord God planted a garden in Eden to the eastward, and there he put Adam, the man whom he had formed. And while Adam slept, he took one of his ribs, and from it he made a wife and helpmate for him. Now Eve, the woman beguiled by the serpent, ate of the forbidden fruit of the tree of life which stood in the midst of the garden, and gave also unto her husband Adam. And because he had forbidden them to eat of the tree, God sent Adam forth from the Garden of Eden and condemned him to till the ground until he should return to the dust from which he had been taken. And in time Eve bore sons to Adam, Abel and Cain. Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And Cain rose up against his brother Abel and slew him. Therefore the Lord sent Cain forth to be a fugitive and vagabond on the earth forever, a nomad, a wanderer in the land of Nod. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply, and God saw that the wickedness of man was great, he said, I will bring a flood upon the earth, and destroy both man and beast whom I have created. But Noah built an ark as God commanded him, and then went his sons and his wife and his sons' wives, and of every living thing there went in 2 by 2. Yeah, probably couldn't fit the whales in there, though. And the rain fell upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and in all whose nostrils was the breath of life died. And when the waters were abated and the earth dried, Noah went forth out of the ark. And the Lord said, Never again will I smite the earth as I have done. And God blessed Noah and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply. And of them was the whole earth overspread, or populated. After many generations from Shem was descended Abram. And Abram went forth with his father from the land of his birth in Ur of the Chaldees into the land of Canaan. Now the Lord said unto Abraham, Get thee out of thy country and from thy father's house unto the land that I will show thee, and I will make of thee a great nation. Walk before me and be thou perfect, and I will give unto thee and thy seed, or descendants, after thee, all the land of Canaan for an everlasting possession. And Abraham did as the Lord commanded. See his name changed? It got changed by God, probably. Did as the Lord commanded, because he suddenly becomes his father of a future descendants, right? Becomes the father of nations. Okay, so obviously his name gets changed. And when he was 100 years old, his son Isaac was born to him. Isaac had twin sons, Esau, who was red and hairy all over, a skillful hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob, who was a quiet man, dwelling in tents. And when he was grown, the Lord appeared unto Jacob and said unto him, Thy name shall not be called any more Jacob, but Israel shall be thy name. Now the sons of Israel, or the descendants, the sons of Israel, and then the descendants, or Jacob, were 12, but he loved Joseph more than all of them, and he made him a coat of many colours, and therefore his brothers hated Joseph, because they thought he was favoured by the old man, right? And it came to pass when they went to feed their father's flocks, and Joseph came unto them, that they stripped him of his coat and sold him for 20 pieces of silver to merchantmen on the way to Egypt. He probably also was a bit of a pimp, told his father, hey, they're doing this, they're doing that, being the youngest, and they didn't like that. Plus he was seems to be daddy's favourite, so they had a hatred for him there. And in Egypt, Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, or the king, brought Joseph and made him overseer over his house and all that he had, because the brothers had sold him, right? So some passing camel traders or whatever. And for 7, we put him in a pit, and he sold him, right? And for 7 plenteous years Joseph gathered and stored up food in the cities. And when 7 years of want followed, there was famine in all lands but in the land of Egypt, famine in Goshen, etc. And Jacob, seeing that there was corn in Egypt, sent Joseph's brother down to buy, because the Egyptians were very, very clever. Like when the Nile flooded over, the black soil on top, and it went down, they planted there. They dropped all their guitars, sitars, drum kits, whatever they did, right? Their paintbrushes, and went and planted. And then when it was all ready, they all got together again, dropped their pens, their guitars, whatever, and went there and reaped it and put it into the pyramids or barns or whatever. So they had plenty. They were prepared in the good times for the bad times. So he sends Joseph's brothers down to buy some corn and stuff. And Joseph knew his brethren, he recognised his brothers, but they knew him not, because he'd grown up, right? And he said, I am Joseph your brother, eventually, whom ye sold in Egypt. Haste ye, go up to my father and bring him down unto me. He's going blind or something like that. And thou shalt dwell near unto me, and I will nourish thee, I'll feed you. Jacob and all his seed brought he with him into Egypt, all his brothers and etc. And Joseph dwelt and died in Egypt, he and his father's house. And the children of Israel multiplied, and the land was filled with them. Now there arose a new king over Egypt. We actually found out who that was. It wasn't Ramses, it was this other one. And said, we had a name for it, but I can't remember what it said at the moment. And said, "Behold, the people of Israel are more and more mightier than we are," because they were like breeding like crazy. "Therefore he set over them taskmasters and made their lives bitter with hard labour and mortar and brick." Well, he actually said, well, let's go and have our way with these women, right, and outbreed these Hebrews, these Israelites. Okay, that's the way to totally outbreed a nation, is to get with their females and outbreed them. So they're like half-breed Egyptians, etc. Okay. Now the wife of a man of the house of Levi bore a son. Okay, so they gave them hard labour and mortar and brick, and he gave instructions that every man child born to a Hebrew mother shall be killed. Okay. Now the wife of a man, because it stops them from breeding, right, and creating more sons and more sons and more sons like they're doing. Now the wife of a man of the house of Levi bore a son, and when she could no longer hide him, she made for him an ark of bulrushes, and laid on it flags by the river's brink. And that means edge. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash at the river. And when she saw the child, she had compassion on him, and he became his son. And she called his name Moses. Now, thinking about that, if she gets this, okay, if all the Egyptians are black, right, as the Hebrew Israelites love to claim, right, the Egyptian chemists on Sunday TV, you love to say, yeah, they're black. There's evidence that they were actually, light brown, black, African black, whatever. We're not saying they weren't. Okay, maybe a mixture of like paler ones as well, because they traded with different people, the Phoenicians, the Aramaeans, probably the Syrians, etc. Right? So they might have intermarried, intermingled, right, and had half-breeds. Okay. So there's a new pharaoh or new king who had no knowledge of Joseph. Right? So this daughter goes down to the river and she finds this basket with this baby in it, so she takes it home. Wouldn't the pharaoh say, hey, if they're all black, okay, this child's white or light skinned, even olive in complexion, and look at us now, where the hell did you get this? Okay, oh, it's my son. So who you been with of lately? Questions like that. Okay, who's the son of your child? Okay, wouldn't he be like puzzled? Saying, hey, hang on a minute, there's something wrong here, something funny's going on. Unless the power of God made him so blind, you just think, oh yeah, okay, whatever. He didn't ask the question here? Or nobody did? So maybe it's very Israelite or Jewish oriented. Okay? It's all from their perspective. It may not have necessarily been like that. We're not saying it didn't, we're just saying maybe. Maybe there's more to it than what you're being told. Okay, and it came to pass when Moses was growing up and he saw an Egyptian smiting a Jew, because the day before a couple of these, he saw some Egyptian overseer beating a Hebrew or something like that, Israelite, and so he smacked him over, killed him, buried him in the sand, right? And then the next day he saw these other two fighting with each other over something. And he says, hey, and they said, who the hell are you? Who do you think you are stepping in? We saw you yesterday. You killed that guy, that overseer. Oop, he's out of there. Because he's been discovered, right? And it came to pass when Moses was growing up and he saw an Egyptian smiting a Jew, that he smote the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. Now when Pharaoh heard this, he sought to slay Moses, but Moses fled and dwelt in the land of Midian. And he led the flock of his father-in-law back of the desert unto Horeb, the mountain of God. And God called to him out of the midst of the burning bush. Well, that's actually incorrect. If you have the original ancient Tab Asheret, Exodus, in the sacred scribal language of God, Lishana Tigis prayer, or even that, what's it called? Lashon Horesh or something, which they are both sister languages, right? So they should be pretty similar. It wouldn't be that. It would be like the Tab Asheret Aramaic translation into the nearest English equivalent says a flying flaming disc, not a bush. Because use your logic and common sense. Go outside and burn a bush and see if it lasts forever. No, it'll burn up and it'll end up burning down to ashes. Okay? So someone might be pulling the wool over your eyes. And it came to pass when Moses was growing up and he saw an Egyptian smiting a Jew, that he smote the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. Now when Pharaoh heard this, he sought to slay Moses, but Moses fled and dwelt in the land of Midian. And he led the flock of his father-in-law back of the desert unto Horeb, the mountain of God. And God called to him out of the midst of the burning bush and said, I am the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob. I am that I am, or I am. I will send thee unto Pharaoh, the king, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the Israelites, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. And when the time came, the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron his brother, saying, in the 10th day of this month, let every man of the congregation of Israel take a lamb for each house. They shall kill it in the evening, and they shall take of the blood and strew it on the side posts and upper doorposts of the houses. And they shall eat of the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread, and will with bitter herbs they shall eat it. It's the Lord's Passover. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not destroy you. And this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and ye shall keep it a feast to the Lord forever. So these Israelites, these Jews, are bound to it. Okay? It's a memorial day, the Passover of when they were liberated, where death passed over their ancestors. Okay, so it's a covenant, a memorial that God has said, you will remember me through this, you'll celebrate this, and you remember me, how your ancestors were liberated. I didn't kill them, etc., etc., at that time when they were being oppressed in Egypt. There were apparently some that didn't want anything to do with that religious facet, right? They may not have had blood on their doors, over the doors, all that sort of stuff, and died. Yeah, their children died or whatever. Yeah, that's what we've come across when we did some research. And the Pharaoh, or the king, had let the people, when he had let them go, God let them out, led them about through the wilderness of the Red Sea, and the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud, and by night in a pillar of fire. And the heart of Pharaoh, the king, turned, and he made ready and took all the chariots of Egypt and pursued after the children of Israel. Because it's probably like, hey, we ain't got anybody to build our monuments, our new pyramids, etc., etc. So if I die, I'm not going to be putting anything. Yeah. Obviously, there's probably not enough labour here, or you're a bunch of lazies that don't want to do it. So let's go get them back. Okay. So the Lord said unto Moses, lift up thy rod, or the staff, and stretch out thy hand over the sea, and divide it. And the children of Israel went on dry land through the midst of the Red Sea. And the Egyptians pursued them and went in after them. It's actually the Sea of Reeds. After them in the sea, or was it the Sea of Soup? S-O-O-P, something like that. In the Tab Eshet, Exodus. Pretty sure it said the Sea of Soup, S-O-O-P. And the Egyptians pursued and went in after them, and the sea returned to its strength, and of the host of Pharaoh, the king, there remained not one of them. So apparently there was actually this, somebody got back to the kingdom of Egypt and wrote all this stuff down. Yeah, well, it's a matter of debate, isn't it? Okay. In the 3rd month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land, because some Egyptian king wrote, don't know whether it was Amos or somebody else, one of the scribes wrote, how the Israelites had biblos in their testicles, some sort of disease, and their pigs had leprosy, according to the book of Tacitus histories. So their oracles were told the Pharaoh at that time, hey, you've got to get these people out of here, because if you don't, this disease is going to spread to your people and infect and kill your people as well. Okay, so you better kick them out. So they did, and then apparently they were wandering on this desert outside, thirsty and hungry and stuff, and they were moaning and groaning. And this guy, Moses, who wanted to be their leader so bad, so desperately, he asked them, and they said, oh, well, if you want to be the leader, you need to find us water, etc., etc. So apparently he went over this hill not far from there, and he saw was going up it or something, and he saw these rams coming down. So he went to where he thought they came from, and he found an oasis. So he found water and all this sort of stuff, and then he was made the leader. And then he turned around to them Israelites apparently and said, "Don't put your trust or hope in any god or man, because look, what have they done for you?" You know, that's from the book of Tacitus Histories. He's been told that story. Okay, he wasn't there at the time, but somebody's told him that. Probably Egyptian or possibly even a Jew. You know, maybe it doesn't specifically say who told him, but he had heard of that in his day. Okay, so in the 3rd month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, they came to the wilderness of Sinai, and there camped before the mount. And the Lord came down upon Mount Sinai and called Moses, and Moses went up and was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. And the Lord said unto Moses, Hew thee 2 tablets of stone. Okay, so he's got to get 2 tablets of stone and write these things in it. Okay, well, did they have the tools in those days to actually chisel something into a stone? Because they apparently had brass instruments which were crap. Okay, they'd wear out fast. So until the introduction of steel or iron they got from somewhere else, then that would be near impossible. So maybe it wasn't stone, maybe it was something else, right? And he wrote upon them the words of the 10 commandments which God spoke, saying, and there they are listed. Different versions vary slightly as to wording and numbering. The books of Leviticus, Numbers and Deuteronomy are the records of many more laws given to the people of Israel and of their troubles as they struggled on the edge of the promised land. Okay, so using your logic, common sense and reality, try carving with primitive tools as they had onto a flat piece of rock. It either was suddenly really soft, or he had the best tools to do it. Okay, it would have had to be iron to last. It wouldn't have lasted very long using a brass type. The books of Leviticus, Numbers and Deuteronomy are the record of many more laws given to the people of Israel and of the troubles as they struggled on to the edge of the promised land. Okay, so Moses in doing these writings on this stone might have taken a long time, hell of a long time. Okay, whereas when God did it with his own finger, because maybe what happened, Moses went down to the people with these tablets and looked down from the hill, from the mountain to the valley below, and he saw them all dancing and carousing and all this sort of stuff with this golden calf, right? So he threw them down, smashed them, and then God had to give another couple of tablets, and this time he did it with his own finger, right? And then Moses went down there, and these people that did all this sort of stuff were dealt with, apparently. Okay, so Moses, the book, and then Moses went up from the plains of Moab unto Mount Nebo, that's over against Jericho. And the Lord said to him, This is Canaan, this is the land which I swore unto Abraham, unto Isaac, unto Jacob. I have caused thee to see it with thine own eyes, but thou shalt not go thither. Go over thither. Because he was supposed to strike this rock with his right staff to have this water come out for the thirsty Israelites, but he didn't. He touched it. Okay, so that's the reason apparently why he didn't go into the promised land. So Moses died there in the land of Moab, but no man knoweth of his sepulchre until this day. Okay? So if God's for real, and he, was it Michael, the angel, and the devil were fighting over Moses' body, so God took it and hid it, no one would know where it is. Unless it's a fabricated story, and it's actually about an Egyptian king called Moses or something like that, Moses, okay, that actually lived, and then the Egyptians buried him in a cave somewhere. They put him in a cave somewhere because he's so popular, stopped the people from pinching all of his ornaments and whatever that they put, the Egyptians do. Be fun with the mummies. They put all these positions and stuff like that. Yeah, so people wouldn't like want to get a piece of his hair or something, you know, as a souvenir. Rip off all his stuff that he's buried with. You know, so they hide him somewhere none of them know. Okay? So very doubtful that these people actually found his body. If God is real and he hid it. Okay? He's not going to hide it and then go, oh, it's over here. Yeah? Yep, you found it. Damn. That sort of thing. Okay, and there hath not risen a prophet since in Israel like unto Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. Well, Moses didn't actually look at him face to face. He was too afraid. He knew that he'd die, right? Okay, so here is Dives, Augustus the god. August 12 BC. An altar was erected to Augustus Caesar in Gaul, and he was made a god of the Roman Empire. Yeah, that was through the Senate. The Senate decreed, oh, you are a god. You are divine. So you must act like that. You must go around saying that you are. Okay? So he went, oh, yeah, okay. He went around saying that. Whereas Tiberius, they said the same thing to him when he was the Caesar. You are a god. You are divine. You must go around saying that. And all the people must pay you reverence or that sort of stuff. He says, no, get stuffed. I'm just a normal man like every other man out there, and I'm not into that rubbish. Yeah. Okay, so he was made a god of the Roman Empire. That was the most outstanding event of the year, although it was an eventful 12 months for the entire family. In the first place, Agrippa died. Julia was again a widow, and now she had 4 children, and a 5th was soon to be born. Gaius and Lucius, the 2 small boys, who were now about 6 and 8, had been adopted by their grandfather as heirs. So yeah, we're thinking that's Caligula. Gaius is Caligula. Okay, they're his head. You know, they're like his oldest sons. He adored them and was also fond of their little sisters, Julia and Agrippina. As for Julia herself, she was still young and lively, and Augustus thought needed another husband to look after her. Casting about for a suitable 3rd son-in-law, Augustus chose his elder stepson. This was a blow to Tiberius. He had never cared for Julia. He was already married, truly in love with his wife, and most reluctant to divorce her, but he was obliged to comply with the request of Augustus. Tiberius and Julia were wed. The marriage was to go fairly well for a short time, but Tiberius was too sober and silent for the lively Julia. While he was away in one of the provinces, she found wild companions and more exciting lovers, and began to seek pleasures in ways that were eventually to lead her to a tragic end. Drusus, Livia's 2nd son, the younger brother of Tiberius, was now married to Antonia, the gentle daughter of Octavia and Antony. Ruddy and full of enthusiasm as ever, so that means he was red-faced, very healthy, etc., etc. That's what ruddy means. In this sense, he was healthy, of good health, and full of enthusiasm as ever. He came back for his brother's wedding from the border of Germany. His boyhood dream of crossing the Rhine into German territory had now been realised. Each year, the past 3 years, Drusus had led an expedition into the deep German forests. He had also been in charge of building fortifications along the Rhine as a protection against the German tribes who had again invaded Gaul and crucified Roman citizens. So crucifixion maybe started from there. Came from there. Originated there. Pushing through the morasses and marches in the north, he had dug a canal from the Rhine through the Zuyder Zee into the North Sea. Now this year of 12 BC, Drusus was made governor of Gaul, and he and Antonia went to live in Lyons, which was the Roman capital. It was an old town of the Gauls and a great meeting place of the tribes. There every spring the Druid priests had held court, judging and settling all disputes that had arisen among the people, divining the will of the gods and offering sacrifices. The power of the Druids had now been broken, their rule replaced by Roman law, and those Gauls who had become Roman citizens forbidden to take part in the old sacrifices. As a substitute, the Gauls were now given a new god to worship, Augustus, the Emperor of Rome, Augustus Divus. Divus is the Latin word meaning godlike, so that's where your word diva for, what's her name? Sir Elton John, Beyonce, etc. means they're godlike or divine. The first altar to him was built by Drusus at Lyons. On the first day of August 12 BC it was solemnly unveiled. Delegates from 60 of the old Gallic tribes were present for the ceremony. A priest was ordained High Priest of Rome in Augustus, and from then on the 1st of August each year, pilgrims were to come from everywhere in Gaul to worship at that altar. Similar altars were also erected in many other towns of Gaul. On one of them the following inscription was engraved: "The people of the city have dedicated this altar to the divine Augustus and have vowed him an annual feast forever. May this be to the honour and glory of the Emperor Caesar Augustus, son of the divine Julius, father of our country's sovereign pontiff, and to the honour and glory of his wife and children, and of the Senate and the Roman people, and of this town which dedicates and devotes itself forever to the worship of his divinity."